Welcome to the Warcraft news. We have got so much to talk about. Well, it's a good thing we already know about Midnight, because if we didn't, Blizzard's leak may have been one of the worst ones to happen to WoW. But thankfully we do, though we still have learned quite a bit. But it actually turns out there's another leak, and it's a survey. It's a leaked survey that shows Blizzard might break one of their big promises. Plus, of course, there is an entire patch this week, which does mean I've got a lot of news and a little bit of drama just for you. Well, someone slipped up, because for a little while at the launch of 11.2, some US players actually saw the Midnight pre-orders. Quite the whoops. Now, the good news is there are no major spoilers here of like plot setting, anything like that, but there is some juicy info. So here's what we're getting. Housing early access, and no matter what version of the game you buy, you will get to play housing early. Obviously that is via pre-order. Now, how early it doesn't say, but we can at least say this: if it's tied to the expansion pre-order, then there's a high chance it will be with the Midnight pre-patch, and it might even be the last War Within patch instead, which is something we pointed out in our last news episode. And I hope it is that, because, well, Christmas break, farming housing items does actually seem quite good. Here's everything else then. So the base edition costs $50. That gets you the expansion, it gets you a boost, and also 500 tender, which is just like before. Then the heroic edition is $70, which nets you all of that, plus another 500 tender, a transmog set, and a mount, specifically the Light Strider raiment and the Lightwing Dragonhawk, though sadly we don't actually know what those look like right now. There are promo images in the shop, but they're obviously just old ones. Now, these of course do sound like elven things, which is really not a surprise, because we know Midnight is based in Quel'Thalas. Then we got the Epic Edition. It's $90, and that's how much you're going to pay for beta access and 3-day early access. Returning trend from the War Within, one that obviously I don't like, and I think that most people don't like. Now, that edition also adds another 1,000 tender for a total of 2,000. There's more cosmetics, obviously. There's a Void Strider set, Voidwing Dragonhawk, a Void Light Searcher mount, and then Hope Flutter and Dream Feather, who are 2 pets. And finally, a list of housing items. There are Void and Light gazebos and fountain. There's 4 portraits, one for Xal'atath, one for Arator, one for Turalyon, and one for Illyria, which is currently called Illyria the Ranger General, which, is a little bit odd. And more on that in a second, because it actually started quite a lot of discussion on Twitter, let's just say. But what I'd say overall is this list is essentially what we have came to expect, but with a little extra tender for the heroic and epic editions. Now, there is something missing here, or so we thought. Dragonflight was our last expansion with a new class, and of course we got early access to that class as part of a pre-order. So I kind of had my heart sink a little bit when I saw this list. I thought this essentially confirmed we were getting no new class. I've seen a lot of worry about that, but then we looked into it, and it actually turns out that Evokers being early was not listed as a part of the pre-order bonus for the War Within. It turns out that early access to Evokers weren't actually part of the pre-order bonus of Dragonflight, and going back, we see the early access was actually announced 4 months after the pre-orders went live, which actually means we still may get some surprises at Gamescom. So that certainly is good. At least it's not time to go Doomer just yet. So, despite this being a leak, it kind of turns out that nothing major leaked. But there is one thing. Obviously, Illyria Windrunner is not Ranger General. Her entire early character arc is actually about her running away from that responsibility. Essentially, as the elder sister, it was her position to take. She leaves it to Sylvanas. We kind of all know how that turned out, but the pre-order bonus here seems to maybe foreshadow how her story in Midnight ends. I mean, there's one way this could be, which is a very obvious mistake from Blizzard. Maybe this is going to be something in the Midnight expansion. And you know what? After following her around in Koresh for a while, she definitely does seem like a woman who's running from something. She's very intense, very serious. So maybe that will finally come to a head. It's a major character development in Midnight. Maybe she takes on that sort of role that she was born for. Maybe there's strange philosophical complications to that, but guess what? This is a news video, and that means it's time to talk about the survey that may break a promise. I have a very simple question for you. If your classic character was going to be added to your modern World of Warcraft account, would you have played it more? Maybe would that have made you make sure that you got the Corrupted Ashbringer, the Hand of Adal title, or maybe the challenge mode transmogs, as an example? Well, as it turns out, Blizzard are actually considering doing that. A leaked survey asked players about the end of Mists of Pandaria Classic. I think for fairly obvious reasons, we're literally going into WoD Classic, and it did present them as one of its 5 options. They were continue into WoD, quote, if it becomes available, stay on MoP forever, move to Classic era, or move back to Kata or earlier. But then there was the unexpected one. transfer characters to modern World of Warcraft. Now, obviously, this is just a survey, but these are the surveys that guide Blizzard's hand. It gives them actual data to make their decisions by, so someone is considering it, even though it's something that, going back, they promised and reiterated would not happen. Now, obviously, some people are not very happy about this, and you know what? Kind of rightly so. They've said for years there would be no progression transfer. So if you say that for years, and then you do something else, that would be a betrayal of the whole system, and it would frustrate a massive number of players. But it also could be the case that we may be kind of jumping the gun. Everyone assumes this means bringing everything over. Blizzard may be considering something else, though. It might just be a character transfer, maybe with no collections, no achievements, essentially just something to let people move their most well-loved characters into a game that they want to continue playing those particular characters on. Given the immediate outcry, I don't think there's probably much to worry about here, and hey, maybe they'll just go do a classic WoD instead. But with all that said, let's talk patch 11.2. Patch 11.2 is here. Koresh is a beautiful zone. The lore that's been coming out of it, I've got to say, is particularly incredible. I really like how they've put things together. I've been enjoying it on a big 65-inch OLED on a gamepad. Honestly, it's a really good experience. But as good as the patch is, obviously we've got to talk about bugs. Like this fun one. Pink sparkles that everyone has been seeing with no explanation. Yeah, I saw them. Maybe you saw them. Don't worry, though. Your graphics card isn't busted. It's not something weird. It is apparently a bug with the selfie cam filters, which are basically showing for everyone nearby. A bit odd, though there are unfortunately some more, serious ones. Like a bug with the quest tracker. People are reporting that tons of objectives aren't being marked as complete, but they'll actually have the quest itself finished. Now, if this does happen to you, the easiest thing to do is just to relog to make sure that everything matches up. So it's hardly the worst, but yeah, it's a paper cut for sure. Then there's the bank. If you know any items missing, apparently, even though it won't feel good, it can just be a cache issue. Apparently just deleting your cache folder and restarting the game will fix that problem. Now, people have also found a way to cheese the new Delve boss Kaivesa using Spell Reflect. This has been fixed, and people who abused it did get their rewards removed. Actually, of course, because it's WoW, someone made a weak aura to cheat her intermission, but then Blizzard hotfixed her to break that method. But then we got the small matter of Rashanor, who's the new world boss. He's a chunky boy. It's so strong that for some groups, he's a 15-minute fight. For me, it was about 10. But in response, Blizzard have nerfed him already. Some of this we can just chalk up to general patch day woes, like severe server lag that was there for like most of the first day. Of course, people were getting the world boss before they'd had a week of gear, which isn't really normal. So maybe that slowed him down, because damage really does scale up with gear. But overall, I don't think this patch has been as buggy as the last few have been. It's not perfect, but that certainly is some improvement. But still, it's obviously frustrating to have quests just simply not work. Okay, that's the bugs. But it's not just the bugs, because there's things that aren't bugs, but are just as weird. Blizzard really should document all of their changes, because people are very, very confused over delve keys this week. Basically, some chests are dropping full keys, some are only dropping shards. People are reporting that they managed to get 4 keys this week like usual, but by doing 6 different weekly quests. Others are reporting they managed to get 6 keys by doing every source. And nobody really knows, right? No one even knows if we're supposed to be getting keys this week, because of course the season hasn't started. But of course it already sort of has started. This is weird, but this is good. It's weird because it's different, but I think this is what we all wanted. So you can do Mythic Zeros now. Previously, you couldn't. You can do Mythic Zeros in week 1 of the patch before the season properly starts, which is actually some, decently harder content that will give you properly useful gear, at least in the short term. So yes, you can do M0s. I think that's great. It, I suppose, gives the Race to World First guilds something to do this week that isn't just exploiting renown, so I'm sure they'll have fun. And of course, we should all think about the per Race to World First guilds, because without something like this, they would have just had to spend the entire week exploiting renown, which would have sucked. Now, of course, they can spend millions of gold to hire split runners for their Mythic Zero dungeons instead. Great. But there's a strange result from all of this. Because only 6 dungeons are available, because Tazavesh on Mythic Zero is actually a sort of special hard mode thing that happens next week, that means that you can max out your vault, but to do so, you'll have to do some dungeons more than once. Bit of a weird unintended thing. The problem then is, well, those dungeons are on a weekly lockout. So if you want your vault maxed, then you've got to do 2 dungeons that won't drop any loot for you. which is just a silly oversight. Then I've got a bit of a PSA. You can still get the Disc Titan belt thingy. Basically, despite overcharged delves being removed, the belt is actually still farmable in tier 1 delves, so you can catch up on that almost immediately. Finally, one last weird thing then. We don't need cloaks this season, in terms of drops, because we're getting our Rishi reps. So Blizzard went and removed cloaks from the loot pool for dungeons and raids, but not from other sources. And not from the Warbound bonus pool. So that won't feel good. Despite them not being useful beyond transmog, you can still get cloaks in certain boxes like the Arathi one, or get Warbound cloaks that are a complete waste of a drop because they can't be used. Now, honestly, none of these are insane game-breaking problems by themselves, but it does kind of add up a little bit, just to say that, well, this expansion has had, lots of systems exist and then be developed. Now Blizzard are trying a few different little things, and that just means that there are some unintended consequences throughout the game, which does make it look like Blizzard are struggling to keep on top of all the different layers of rewards and gameplay that they've got within the game. And that, to many players, leads to a confusing experience. I see that a lot in our comments, a lot on social media. I think it's fairly common, and let me know if you or people you know are having the same. Because it really isn't your fault. Like, we've been following all these changes as they go, playing in the PTR. It's like literally our job to do all this stuff, and we often still do get blindsided by most patches, just because something will change, something will appear to change, and there'll be no official word, so we'll just be confused for a bit as to, does anything work? Which is obviously brilliant for mysteries and stories, but for gameplay, that we're maybe, planning our gearing around, not really great. Anyway, there's a little bit of unreleased knowledge that I can speak to that. Basically, I had an interview with Holly and Ian a while ago, and the footage was completely corrupted and absolutely useless. When I was talking to them, though, the topic of shit being complex for no good reason came up. And very much the gist I got was they want to simplify things quite a lot there. I know that between crafting, all the different resources, Valor Stones, what are they even for? All that stuff, it seems they're aware of that problem. I've got to imagine the War Within was kind of locked into being War Within, so I would not be surprised if for Midnight we see huge amounts of, I'm not going to say complexity in a good way, but just bloat. I have a feeling they're going to try and remove that from these game systems. But well, that's it for the news. You gotta watch this video next. It's about the big 11.2 class changes. We tried something different in the video, by the way. I know for a lot of you guys, and actually for me watching that kind of video, when it's just numbers and spell names and stuff for 30 minutes, it's just boring. It's not really fun to listen to. We tried a different approach, a bit more experiential. It seems people are enjoying it. So if that's not usually your cup of tea, check it out. Because man, especially Frost DK, Unholy, the Hunters, some real good changes.